He and John Wooden were in school together at the same time and happened to be fraternity brothers.
So Hooper Field continues to accent what the history of Bicknell is. It's something that almost everyone in the community shares, and it's something that we use to highlight the romantic nature, you might say, of small town. Either it's local stories about folks who played there, or some memory they have, or all of our Hall of Famers that have coached and played there. It is one of the things that we put in our crown as being an accent and a highlight of Bicknell.
Hooper Field came into existence back in 1917, thanks to a generous donation made by its namesake, Herman Hooper, in the early 1900s. A stockholder in J.C. Penney, Hooper took pride in investing in civic projects within Bicknell's community. Hooper Field was home to the Bicknell High School Bulldogs for almost 50 years, spanning from 1917 to 1962, then continued to serve as home for the consolidated North Knox Warriors until 1974. For decades, the site housed both football and baseball, including Little League. Dave Hunter and Jack Lynn both grew up in Bicknell and went on to play major roles within local athletics. Fond memories of their time playing at Hooper Field run deep for the two.
Here in Bicknell, it was sponsored by the churches. You had to be a member of the church and attend there. And so there was the Methodist Church, the Catholic Church, Christian, Baptist, all had a team, Salvation Army, and the kids were divided out accordingly.
But yeah, the fence wasn't here. And I remember, and still today, how right field goes up.
Yes. Yeah.
You're actually, if you're playing right field, you're looking down at the plate, you know. And I remember I wasn't really a very good player, but the last year I played, my best hit ever was against Max Benson. He was the pitcher for the Baptist team, and there was a thunderstorm coming. We weren't going to be able to play very much longer. I mean, the clouds were rolling in, and I hit a pitch all probably beyond the outfield fence. You know, that was the biggest thrill of my career, is getting to hit off Max Benson, because he and I were neighbors.
It was a great experience growing up as a kid. We had a great time, great camaraderie with the guys, and it was just a good time growing up.
While Little League carries many memories for the local community, back in the 1920s, the men's semi-pro team, the Bicknell Braves, called Hooper Field home. And thanks to a paid fundraiser, their crowning moment came in 1921. As Mayor Thomas Estabrook will tell you, the hometown men beat out the one and only St. Louis Cardinals.
In September of that year, the Cardinals came to Bicknell by train and played on Hooper Field against the Bicknell Braves in an exhibition game of just local Bicknell guys who played baseball. And in a win, in the first exhibition loss for the Cardinals in 2 years, the Bicknell Braves beat the St. Louis Cardinals by a score of 9-6. And it's chronicled in the Bicknell Daily News in 1921, where it actually is covered over several different days, how the game went and who the players were and what the crowd was like, and how much of just an outstanding event that it was. And so after the Cardinals took their loss, they returned to St. Louis by train. They got on the train at the train station in downtown and returned to St. Louis and feasted on chicken prepared by the First Baptist Church women, as I guess as a parting gift, you might say.
While that monumental day will always stand out for the community, when it comes to high school football, Hooper Field witnessed many great games during that same time period.
Vincennes and Bicknell had a long football history, and in the early years, in the 20s, Bicknell dominated Vincennes. If you look on the display over here with the Heritage Circle, it has some scores of games, then Vincennes would be beaten by Bicknell by pretty good scores. But by the 30s, it began to flip, and by the 40s, then it became the other way. And I think the last game they played, Vincennes and Bicknell, was probably 1955 or 56, and I can't remember if it was on this field or was at Inman Field in Vincennes. Yeah. But by then, it became one-sided, and there was no reason to continue the rivalry.
Right. I'm not old enough to have ever seen it, but I have seen pictures of the grandstand. And my dad would relate stories of what happened here on the field when they had great teams and that, and had a real history. A lot of great players played on this field and coached here. The boards over here have 12 people that are in the Indiana Hall of Fame, Football Coaches Hall of Fame, Illinois, one New York, one's from Georgia. We're in the Hall of Fames and that, so all of them either played or coached on this field.
Fast forward to the early 60s. Both Hunter and Lynn remember the period of consolidation of the smaller area schools, Bicknell, Bruceville, Freelandville, Edwardsport, Oaktown, and Sanborn, into North Knox High School for the 1963-64 school year. And while the process of consolidation was riddled with politics and mixed feelings, Lynn says it didn't take long for the students to come together, especially when it came to athletics.
You know, when the kids all came together, they were friends. It didn't take but just a few days, and
Correct.
you were buddies with the same guys you were playing in junior high against.
Right. Rich Jones was from Bruceville. He was the basketball coach.
Right.
And our great friend, our late great friend, I have to mention him here, Don Skinner, became guidance director, and he was the principal of Bicknell High School. He always said that if Bicknell had not had football, North Knox probably would not have had it, because obviously there were no football players from the other schools.
My freshman year of high school was the very first year of North Knox. We were the first four-year graduating class of North Knox, and so I was fortunate enough to be able to play football on this field. I ran track. It was an old cinder track that went around here. It wasn't quite 400 meters. It was a little short, but that defined the field. Obviously, you could see the old imprint. If you looked at an aerial view, you could kind of pick out where the track was at. The field house up here, the gray building, the dressing room, is unique in the fact that it was funded by a exhibition match with Joe Louis when he was world champion down at the old Bicknell gym down here, and that was he fought 4 rounds of exhibition boxing, and that was what they used to fund this building right up here. And it stood the rest of the time, still is used by the city today. And if you go in and look at the walls, there's some painting, spray painting on the walls in there from the last game that was played on this field, from when they beat Westfield to go to the state championship.
Well, I broadcast the last game, the Westfield North Knox game. Don and I did it.
Yes.
I would really love for there to be another football game played by our North Knox Warriors on this field. And I don't know how we do it, but we would try to figure it out. And so I think that would be a kind of an accent to that. And oddly enough, 2024 is the 50th anniversary of that team and of that championship game. So I think for there to be some way where we could recreate some of that effect, I think would be just great for the community. And we get to tell that story again.
And we just cannot leave Hooper Field until we tell you another great story that intertwines a native Bicknell athlete and the great John Wooden.
There's a gentleman that's on the World War II plaque down here that died, Fred Stalkup. He went by Runt Stalkup. He was kind of a short guy. Played football here, was a very good football player. Went to Purdue and played football for Purdue. Well, as the story transpired, he and John Wooden were in school together at the same time and happened to be fraternity brothers. Well, John Wooden was called up in World War II and was to go on a ship and be transferred out, but he got an appendix attack and had to have his appendix removed, and Fred Stalkup took his place. Well, subsequently the ship was bombed and sunk, and Fred Stalkup died. And so my dad heard John Wooden on TV relate part of that story, and so he wrote him a letter. And my dad just typed it on an old manual typewriter and sent it to John Wooden, UCLA. And about 3 months later, he got the letter back, and John Wooden had handwritten on the bottom, yes, Fred Stalkup was a fraternity brother of mine. He played for Purdue football, and he took my place. Had I been there, I would have probably been the one that died. And so that was Fred Runt Stalkup, and played for the Bicknell Bulldogs and had a great career.
I'd never heard that story before. That's
Yeah.
a great story.
While the history of Hooper Field has been passed down through the generations, Estabrook and the community have now solidified its memories with great honor in the new Heritage Circle, which was dedicated earlier this year.
Heritage Circle is something that we are very, very proud of. It has two pieces, the military remembrance piece and of course the community heritage Hooper Field piece. And it's something that allows us not only currently to think about our heritage and what the community has been, but it's something for future generations who won't have lived a lot of these events that we're talking about. It's something that allows us to put forth an understanding as to where we came from as a community, what the foundations of the community are. Bicknell is not just any other small town. We have a great history and we can make that happen again. And the only way that we can do that is to tell those stories and to remind people what the community is and what we hope for it to be.
With photojournalist Dave Novak, I'm Nicole Carey. Thanks for watching History Vault.